Hello and welcome back to my next part in the QNAP QTS versus Synology DSM series of videos. I want to help you guys decide which one of these two NAS brands deserves your money and your data. Now for today's video we are looking at surveillance. Both of these brands have gone their own way slightly when it comes to surveillance, and ultimately you end up with a very different user experience with each of them in the long run. So remember, today isn't about which one's best, it's about which one's best for you. Now there are a few disclaimers straight off the bat, and again I've used these in the other videos, but I do want to touch on them again because they're going to be even more relevant to today's video than any of the other ones before it. First and foremost, I'm using OBS screen recording for today's video, so it will be maintaining all of the recordings of today's video, but we are doing a lot of graphical stuff today using IP cameras in our local area environment, as well as bench testing a lot of client software and browser software. Consequently, our utilization of hardware is going to be obsessively high. This is a GPU card enabled NAS, but there's no avoiding it that both Google Chrome and the QVR and Surveillance Station client, once they're active, and the QVR one was the last one we used, are going to eat a lot of memory and CPU and GPU power. Consequently, as clear as everything's going to appear to me, there's a good chance it might not be that clear for you. So I apologise in advance if there are certain graphical hiccups or the frame rate isn't as good as it can be. That is not down to the NAS, it's down to me and the way I am recording this on screen. Also, I'm doing the half screen system we saw before, simply because it's the best way to show you guys the whole user environment, but both of the client tools from either of the respective NAS platforms will need to be full screened because they do need an entire control deck to show you. So I'll try and keep them as consistent as possible, but later on they're going to have the whole screen. And the rest of them is fairly standard. We are using a 1 GBE network, and this is a 1 GBE connected NAS to two NASs over 1 GBE into a switch. Consequently, there are a lot of cameras sharing this network environment, and I'm connected via 1 GBE. So occasionally, don't be surprised if we lose connectivity with some of these cameras. This is not an ideal business camera environment I'm utilizing, and having 6 cameras I think I've got connected around this system environment, connected to a 1 GBE switch, along with myself, does limit the amount of throughput going and being shared between all of these devices. I am using 8GB models of both of these NASs. They've both got 8GB inside, so consequently I've got plenty of memory in each individual NASs, but the client PC may struggle. And finally, I am using a localized environment here, accessing these over the local area network, not the internet, so I'm quite close. I've got a lot of NASs and cameras around me, which you're going to see in the camera footage in a while, and consequently, occasionally you're going to hear the keyboard like this, or you're going to hear the mouse like this. So I apologise in advance if that gets super annoying, and I'll try and remove it in post. But it's been better part of 3 minutes. Let's get on with it. So both brands have got their own fully featured premium surveillance platform. In the case of QNAP, it's QVR Pro, and in the case of Synology, it's Surveillance Station. But it is worth highlighting that that's not the end of the run. In the case of the QNAP, you actually have 2 more surveillance applications within the NAS system. You have got the older generation Surveillance Station, which is still available on Realtek powered NASs and can still be installed on pretty much any QNAP NAS system, but it's worth highlighting that it's done so because it is a less demanding surveillance tool. It utilizes less hardware, and because of that it's not as fluid, and it hasn't, although it is regularly updated, it's nowhere near as polished as QVR Pro. And I'm not going to include it in today's video because this video is primarily about the 53D series and above, so I'm not including Surveillance Station, but I have done a video on that already. What I will also add is Surveillance Station has between 2 and 4 camera licenses depending on the NAS you buy, and QVR Pro has 8 camera licenses as standard, so it can support 8 cameras straight away at no additional cost. We'll talk about that a little bit more detail later on. There's also little add-ons for it with regards to connecting surveillance centers and your surveillance footage backup, as well as security protocols and an overview app as well. On top of that, you can even install USB cameras to your QNAP NAS. I've already set it up for the sake of this video, but you can connect a standard USB web camera and connect it to your QNAP NAS system via a USB connected port, and then that application will allow you to convert that camera into a surveillance camera. It can either be used within the app the app itself, or you can attach that camera to both Surveillance Station and QVR Pro. That camera feed can either be viewed via the web browser, or it can be shared with other users if you so choose. So we can either view that camera live, or we can just share that link to connected users, either that utilize the NAS or just sent to a friend or more. And again, USB cameras on the QNAP NAS system can be used in everything from Skype to their brand new screen sharing and collaboration tool in Koi Meter and more. But ultimately, I would use USB cameras in the QNAP NAS so you can bolt them all into QVR Pro. But bear in mind that there are licenses required for the USB camera tool as well. You have to create channels and add cameras. And of course, there are mobile tools as well, with mobile applications that allow you to turn your mobile phone into a camera for IP camera pickup, and other security tools as well. But that's kind of the main QNAP cover. There you go. Now, the Surveillance Station platform, as mentioned, although there isn't USB camera support and there's only one app, it is still probably one of the best surveillance applications I've ever used. Now, for a number of reasons, I do think Surveillance Station on the Synology is probably the better choice for the majority of users. It's very user-friendly and quite intuitive. It has certain features that aren't available on the QNAP, such as the ability to view your cameras directly from within the web browser, something that the QVR platform doesn't really do that well. The QVR platform requires you to use the client to get the most out of it, and although both platforms have a client app, the ability to view cameras in the web browser can't be underestimated. Although what I will add is that although you can access the cameras via the web browser, the Synology platform only has 2 camera licenses included with your purchase. So you can have 2 cameras, which is what I've done here. I'm going to wave at myself there in the background, but you can only have those 2 by default, and you have to pay around £30 for each extra camera you add. So 8 camera licenses with the QNAP and 2 with the Synology. That may make a huge difference or which choice you go for in terms of budget. It's also worth highlighting that the viewpoint you're looking at here is squished because of that half camera. If we full screen it, it will look a great deal better. But we're half screening it, and we're going to go through the cameras properly using the client tool in a short while. On top of that, the Synology platform allows you to add more add-ons. So both of them have got their own dedicated app center that you can add extra features and functionality, as well as list some of the client applications too. But what I will say is the Synology platform has more useful applications in its surveillance platform, along with a great couple of applications for your mobile, which I do strongly recommend. Sorry, we're using up all the network bandwidth there. So in the case of the Synology platform, if we go into the apps, we can look at the available applications there. Get rid of the licensing center because we've already talked about the license. There's no applications currently available or supported in my existing configuration. But on the Synology platform, we have got the ability to live broadcast cameras if we so choose. So we can turn a mobile phone into a live cam if we so choose, using YouTube's own sharing service. On top of that, they have a really cool feature known as Home Mode, where you can install the DS camera application for your mobile, and both platforms have dedicated applications for mobile to monitor monitor cameras and turn phones into cameras. But the Home Mode allows you to synchronize your mobile with your surveillance NAS, and although all the cameras in your home might be off, the minute you leave your home and your mobile breaks network and Wi-Fi connection to the same connection that the NAS is on, the minute you walk far enough away that your mobile is no longer registered on your home network, the system will turn all the cameras on. And it's quite useful, rather than relying on a schedule or manually turning on cameras, to have the cameras turn themselves on the minute you leave the house. It's a great feature and I do recommend it. But the QNAP platform I would say, although it's not as user-friendly, is far more customizable, and with its larger degree of cameras supported, as well as add-ons in the form of QVR Face and QVR Door and lots of other AI-powered applications coming soon, it is not to be sniffed at. Now, we talked about IP cameras. As you see here, we've got the 2 cameras added on the Synology platform, and I've added at least 4 cameras to the QNAP, so I've used up all of the available licenses on the Synology, and I've got 4 already used and 4 available on the QNAP. Adding cameras is really straightforward on both of them. You just scan the local area network, and it will find cameras that are either on the compatibility list or are on-viv supported. That is kind of a general support of cameras. I've already added all the available cameras in my local area network, so I'm not really going to find any here. But once cameras are added, it's incredibly straightforward. Just add their details, or if you want to, if you already know the camera, you can search for it manually and enter the camera IP you want, and from there it will add the camera to it available. From there you can change recording settings. So let's choose the same camera on both of these recordings. So let's go for this camera here. And both of these devices allow you to configure the camera in a number of ways. So if we edit the same camera on both of these systems, we can see recording settings on both of them are readily available. You can do streams, sub-streams. You can create 2 separate recording streams from the same camera. From there, you can create a schedule of how and when you want it to record. And that will allow you to choose certain times of day or certain types of recording and alert pattern to be set up quite easily. And again, this is what I mean about things being more user-friendly on the Synology. As you can see, the edit patterns and device settings and live view and event detection are all in the same window on the Synology. Whereas on the QNAP, they're broken down into separate tabs. They are connected, but they are still separate tabs. We can still create a schedule where at different times of day we have different events taking place. So if we create a brand new one, we can say that on Sunday and Saturday, so we'll go for all of Sunday and all of Saturday, we will have inactivity during the week. We can set that up quite easily, and that's schedule 1 created. Now we can do it the same on the Synology platform, but you find it's just a little easier. So you can do like dedicated areas of motion detection or create a customized pattern if you so choose. You can enable those detection rules on the QNAP there on the left, and it is a lot more analytical and a lot more customizable, but I wouldn't go as far as to say it's as user-friendly as the Synology platform. The Synology platform, although user-friendly, no, it is worth highlighting that a lot of the options are just not there. Indeed, with the Synology platform, what you will find from time to time is that a lot of the configuration options are not readily apparent or indeed available. They do have a dedicated AI-powered surveillance NAS in the DVA3219, but even if you are using AI-powered cameras, the Synology platform can't take advantage of the majority of those features without an AI-powered NAS in GPU form. Now, once we move away from this, we can have a look at some of the more configurable options. As mentioned, the QNAP seemingly has a lot of its selection and editing options built into separate tabs here, with the Synology instead putting them all into one window for you to configure between. As mentioned, one of the biggest differences between these devices is the fact that you can't access a live feed on the QNAP in the web browser. You need to use the dedicated app. And before we get to that, let me just show you an example of what I mean. Right now, on the live feed, I can now view both of the cameras that are connected on the Synology NAS. I am going to have to full screen it. This gives me the ability to control a number of things. So for example, we look at the camera here that has pan tilt zoom. We can rotate the camera with a mouse here on the web browser and rotate that camera around as we see fit. We can use zoom options if we choose. We can zoom in little by little, and this camera has an optical zoom, so it will be able to do it a lot easier. We can enable audio in and out if we choose. We can pause recordings or drag and zoom into close-up areas if we choose. All of this via the web browser. All of the features I'm talking about are readily available on QVR Pro, but using the downloadable client. You can't do them here on the web browser. You can take snapshots that are saved locally, and you can use more information about the camera in the background if you have multiple cameras, or lower or heighten the stream quality on the fly. Likewise, this works for cameras whether they have pan tilt zoom or not, and you can even create patrol patterns on cameras that have got pan tilt zoom enabled, as well as audio in and out, utilizing the recording of audio nearby, or alerting potential burglars by shouting at them with audio out on supported cameras. You can choose whether you want to use the customization and management options built into the camera, or if you want to use the ones that are built into Surveillance Station. You can pick and choose how and where you want to utilize them. Upload emaps of your local environment, and therefore add where the cameras are, so you can get real-time graphics on where cameras are being activated in. There's lots of options readily available about both the NAS system and the cameras that you're connected to, with a huge archive being kept in the recording area, allowing you to look at recordings of footage that your cameras have captured over time, not just the alerts, and with all of the recorded footage being accessible at the same time as the camera's recording. Now, the timeline option, once again within the Surveillance Station platform from Synology, is accessible here via the web browser. It allows you to sequence through the past and all the days or weeks that you've recorded, depending on your retention policy, and look at recordings. So if we rewind back, we can have a look at what the cameras have done so far. There's all of my recordings done earlier of me recording all of these things, and I appreciate I barely moved off the spot for a couple of hours, but you can see that there are differences there as we cycle through the time. You can even use intelligent speed synchronization and scanning built into the Synology NAS. There's me running around getting everything set. Bit of builder's bum crack there while I was looking at a laptop, but ultimately that is quite an intelligent, easy way to access recordings, and at the same time here we can see that the cameras have still been recording that whole time. Surveillance Station does bring a lot to the table. Now, let's move back over to QVR Pro, because for QVR Pro, much like Surveillance Station's client app, which is effectively exactly what we saw via the web browser, but dedicated to a client that you download, this QVR Pro application is far more detailed, but you need to use the client. So as you see here, we've got 4 cameras set up here, but there's so much more that we can do than this. So say for example, we've got the pan tilt zoom that we've just talked about, the same camera that was being utilized by the Synology just now. We can heighten that camera, rotate it a little bit. We've got all of those exact same options. Now, that's the camera there that we're looking at. But let's say, for example, we want to now create a sub recording there of that camera. We can create another sub recording if we want of the NAS there in the corner. We can do even more than that. We can use the USB camera here at the top left, and from there do a separate manual recording at any given time as we want. Not just snapshots, if we so choose, that can be saved locally to the PC or onto the NAS, but we can create multiple camera feeds over time. And again, all of these can be done as main streams or substreams. You can already use pre-created grids as well of all of the cameras as you see fit. You can do a rotational view that will flick between each camera one by one, and therefore show a camera every few seconds, and each camera can also be viewed as a playback in real time. So say for example, with the rotational camera, what we can do is create a separate stream for that camera. So let's create another brand new stream of that camera there, but this one we want to look at some historical data. The ability to play back files whilst the cameras are still recording is not limited to just one camera, and in fact you can add multiple cameras doing this. Unfortunately, by adding more cameras it will consume more CPU power, more memory, and ultimately will limit this recording today. But it is worth highlighting that the deck and the number of cameras you've got is really limited at your own imagination. You can add as many cameras as you like within the supported limitations of that CPU, but higher end CPUs such as some of the Ryzen's or Xeon processors do support an enormous array of cameras. Now, again, the different options open to you do depend quite a lot on the different cameras you choose to use, like right now when I'm being recorded. And you can create these extra feeds in real time, each of which can have their own alerts if they're being controlled by the camera utilizing Surveillance Station's own configuration options, not those of the ones that are built into your system. Now bear in mind, not only can you access them here via the client app, but you can utilize a keyboard video mouse setup on your QNAP NAS. So if you are running an HDMI port on your system, if we go back there, get rid of Surveillance Station there, save ourselves some GPU power, you can use the HDMI output on your QNAP NAS. This will allow you to attach a keyboard and mouse and HDMI monitor and have a standalone surveillance solution that runs that QVR software, all the while with that being accessible via your internet connection or via a connected client device. All of them can be run parallel to one another, and each one of them has its own security and alert credentials if you so choose. On top of that, with the HDMI output and support of the remote control functionality, home users will be able to attach a QNAP remote control, which goes for about a tenner, I think, and some NASs even have it included, and allows you to have an HDMI output maybe for Plex Media Server, multimedia and more, and with the click of a button, switch over to your surveillance setup, completely controllable with a remote control from the comfort of your sofa. There's lots of options built in, and don't forget the ability to both watch cameras and record live feed from those cameras simultaneously, both for motion detection, light detection, and on scheduled times of day and scheduled alert patterns per camera. Both NAS brands allow you to create recorded grid patterns as well for your cameras. So in the case of Synology, the QNAP, if we go into the camera settings, we can look at one of the cameras we've added, and then from there create a recording pattern. We can choose that we want the camera to record a certain region. Now, there's lots of ways in which you can do it. As mentioned, you can edit the stream and recording settings there in the camera settings area, or go to motion detection and from there select an individual camera. So in the case of a rotational camera there, we can go in and create a preset alert, not only at a certain time of day, but we can choose a region of the camera that we want to alert that camera, motion detection to be added. So for example, we can choose a motion detection alert, an alarm alert, audio detection, line crossing, and a lot of these are things that on the Synology platform you do need to have a GPU powered NAS in order to take advantage of them. And these are things that are just included with the QNAP NAS platform. On top of that, you can also set certain areas and detection for all cameras or individual cameras. You can really create a very tailored area of control here. So you can set it up much like if this then that if an event is detected, then that's where you would choose the notification that goes through, and if you want the camera to record, if you want certain users to be notified, and more. On top of that, if you carry on, you can then go into the individual camera feeds and then select those areas of recording, and that's kind of one of the cool things you can do with these surveillance platforms. Again, connecting cloud services and internet services if you choose, but the idea in the event management and camera management areas that allow you to create these very, very customizable security systems. And remember, 8 camera licenses are included with your device, which is always welcome. From here, you can change a lot of the settings or share it directly via a link if you so choose, but a lot of these are available on both NAS brand platforms. So don't think that what you're seeing here only applies to one brand. So if we go back into that one, and this time we look at the stream and recording settings and the event settings, we're able to create a lot of those very customizable options from within the camera. And again, that grid recording is a lovely cool feature that the Synology platform does provide. And there you go, there's our camera feed there, but again, nowhere near as fluid as when you're watching it there directly from the camera via your web browser. So again, lots of options, lots of configuration. The Synology is the one though that brings a lot of utility to the table, but maybe not as detailed as the QNAP platform, but certainly brings it in a user-friendly way. So if we look at the IP camera feed, and the ability to access that feed via the web browser cannot be understated. So from here, we just go for the edit there, and we can edit that camera in what seems like a far more intuitive way. So for example, there's that recording pattern we mentioned earlier. There's the different kinds of recording, and if you want the recording to happen for motion detection, to use a lower quality and therefore retain larger recordings and use less network, that is an option that's open to you. The live feed allows you to change how and what you see on there, and optimization allows you to change recording patterns and recording types to better utilize your storage area. But it's event detection that we've touched on that really brings a lot to the table. For example, the ability to select an area of recording. So say you only want to record one area of motion here, for example. So when that chair moves back, you can set it so it will only detect stuff that happens in this location. Now, QNAP has that built into QVR Pro, but you have to dig through to find it, and it's not so intuitive and easy to find. Little things like that is what I mean when I'm talking about user-friendly nature of the Synology platform versus the slightly more intense but ultimately more customizable QNAP platform. But I'm going to wrap things up now because I've shown you guys more than enough about these surveillance platforms. I've done dedicated videos on both QVR Pro and Synology Surveillance Station platform, both with and without GPU support, as well as some of the GPU powered things in QVR Pro. Let me know which one appeals to you the most, and let me know in the comments. Click like if you've enjoyed this video, click subscribe if you want to learn more, and I'll see you next time.